So my name is Kristin Neff, and I am an associate professor at the University of Texas at Austin in the Educational Psychology Department. My life's work is really the study of self-compassion. I've done a lot of research on the topic. I've also written a book called Self-Compassion, and I've just released a new 6-CD set, which basically teaches skills of self-compassion called Self-Compassion Step by Step. So in a broad sense, self-compassion involves treating yourself like you would a close friend you cared about whenever you're suffering, whether that suffering is from some mistake you've made or feelings of inadequacy or some struggle you're experiencing in your life. In a more specific sense, self-compassion has 3 main components. The first is treating yourself with kindness, care, support, as opposed to harsh self-judgment. Usually we are so much more judgmental on ourselves than we are to not only the people we care about, we're often harsher to ourselves than we are to people we don't like very much. Right? So self-compassion reverses that process. Also very important is remembering that imperfection is part of the common shared human experience. What often happens is when people fail, they make a mistake, or they're struggling in their life, there's this kind of subconscious assumption that everyone else is doing well, living these perfect lives, and something has gone wrong when I failed, something has gone wrong when there's some struggle, as if baseline should be perfection. And what happens with that assumption is that we feel very isolated in our suffering. So with self-compassion, we remember that, suffering in various forms is normal. That is the human experience. And therefore, when we suffer, we can feel more connected to others and not so isolated. And then the third component is mindfulness, or the willingness to be, to turn toward our pain and suffering, to be aware of it, and to pause, which is necessary to give yourself compassion. If you're just immediately in fix-it mode, or you're trying to avoid your problems, or you're so busy you can't even pause to realize how hard it is, you can't give yourself compassion. In our society, especially in American society, everyone has to feel special and above average to feel okay about themselves. If I told you that, your schoolwork or whatever it was, your profession, that you were average, you'd be crushed, wouldn't you? Most of us are crushed to feel that we're average. So we all have to feel special and above average, which, of course, is logically impossible. So in order to feel self-esteem, what happens is we're in this constant state of social comparison. Am I better than this person? Is this person better than me? That social comparison leads to things like bullying in middle school. Why do kids bully? Partly because they want to have self-esteem. I'm cooler than this kid. This kid is weak and wimpy. I'm stronger than this kid. It's involved in prejudice. My political, racial, whatever group is better than yours. That's a way of enhancing our self-esteem. The other problem with self-esteem is that it's contingent. It's contingent on success. We feel good when we succeed, and we're reinforced when we succeed for what happens when we fail. Self-compassion steps in precisely when you need it most, and that's when you failed. Self-compassion is not an evaluation of self-worth. It's just a way of treating yourself kindly, whether times are good or times are bad. So it's much less contingent on things like looking a certain way or succeeding than self-esteem is. So the number one block to self-compassion is people they truly believe they need to be self-critical, harshly self-critical to motivate themselves. Right? That if they aren't self-critical, they'll become lazy slobs. Basically, there's this real fear of that. But you can motivate yourself out of concern for your well-being. You can motivate yourself not out of fear of being inadequate, but because you care about yourself. So think about a parent. Parents can motivate their children 2 ways. One is through harsh criticism. Let's say a child or a college student fails an exam. So one parent might say, "I'm ashamed of you. You'll never amount to anything. You're no good," which makes you cringe, right? That's not going to motivate that student. It's going to make them lose faith in themselves, be afraid of failure. But that's precisely the type of language we use with ourselves. But if a parent's compassionate and says, hey, that must be so hard to fail. I love you anyway. Everyone fails. It's part of, learning. But here's the key. What can I do to support you? How can I encourage you? How can I be there for you so you can reach your goals? Because, I know you want to graduate and get a good job, etc. And that supportive, encouraging approach is actually much more effective at motivating ourselves. It helps us believe in ourselves, which is really important for reaching our goals. And it helps us to learn from failure as opposed to being afraid of failure. There is a study that we just published on the role of self-compassion in romantic relationships. And all I can say for you viewers is that if you're on the dating market, have your potential partner go to my website and take their own self-compassion level and give you the score. Well, actually, maybe not before the first date. But what we find is that people who are more self-compassionate are rated by their partners as being much more giving, much more capable of intimacy, more caring, less controlling, less verbally aggressive. Because if you think about it, if you rely on your partner to meet all your needs, then you get pretty upset when they don't meet your needs exactly as you want them to be met. But if you can meet at least some of your own needs, some of your own needs for love, acceptance, validation, emotional support, you actually have more to give to others. So it's, it's a very helpful tool for being in relationship with others in a healthy and less dependent way. I've been practicing self-compassion for about 7 years, and I've seen all sorts of benefits in my life in terms of helping with anxiety and stress and other forms of suffering. But it really got tested when my son was diagnosed with autism. And when that happened, for parents of special needs kids, there's a lot of feelings that come up that we feel we shouldn't have, like disappointment. Well, how can I be disappointed in this child that I love more than anything else in the world? And so I knew that I had to accept that these feelings were arising and give myself compassion for it. It's hard to learn that your child is autistic. And then what happened is those feelings were able to pass through and work out on their own much more quickly. And then I could turn toward my son and accept him. Well, one of the first things is just to give yourself permission to treat yourself kindly. A lot of people think that it's selfish or that it involves self-pity. It's really not. Remember, self-compassion recognizes the shared human condition. It's not, woe is me, poor me. It's, well, life is difficult for everyone. So, and again, because it helps you give more to others, it's not selfish. So giving yourself permission to be kind, knowing that it's going to help you be happy, it's going to help others be happy. Then concrete things like noticing how you speak to yourself, asking, would I say this to a close friend? Usually not. What would I say to a close friend? Can I try treating myself that way? You can do this in letter writing. It's very effective. If you're really struggling, write yourself a letter in the same way that you would, again, what you would express to a good friend in the same situation, but write that to yourself. And then you can go back and read it. That's helpful. Probably one of the most helpful things, though, because we're mammals, we are programmed evolutionarily to respond to warmth, physical warmth, soothing touch, and gentle vocalizations. As mammals, when we, just like think of a mommy lion and her cub, we're programmed for our bodies to calm down and to feel safe and to feel soothed. So one of the most effective ways to give yourself compassion is through some physical gesture, because you're actually tapping into that mammalian caregiving system at a physiological level. So finding some touch that feels comfortable. A really common one might be to put both hands over your heart, or maybe on your belly, or cradle your cheeks, or do something like this. Some people just holding their hand. That can let your body know that you care. And then sometimes it's easier for your mind to follow after your body has calmed down a little bit. I think what's beautiful about self-compassion is that it's equally strongly linked to reductions in states like depression, anxiety, stress, but also positively linked to things like happiness, life satisfaction, curiosity, gratitude. And that's because self-compassion, we embrace suffering with care, with love. And so we're helping to alleviate the suffering. At the same time, we're generating this very positive emotion of connected care and really loving, connected presence. And that's a positive emotion. So it does both at the same time, and I think that's one of the reasons it's so good for living a balanced life. It's a real strength that can help you cope.